Well, hello there again, and welcome to episode 2 of our landscape painting. So our painting is now dried, and as you can see, we've got our lovely little fluffy cloud details in our sky, and then down here we've got our little lake. So what I'm now going to do is I'm now just going to put in some of the landscape details, and we're going to be adding in some mountains. So I've got a nice size 12 brush here, so it's something just a little bit bigger than we've normally used. And I've also got some kitchen paper so I can dry off the excess. And I'm just going to be using just some nice grey, so you can either mix the grey with the black and the water, or I've got some grey right here on my palette. So all I'm going to do is just pick a line, and that's going to be my horizon line. And what will help you is if you just add in some low tack tape. So you can use the low tack tape around about a quarter of your page. So just pop that in on directly across the paper, and that will give you your horizon line that you're then working on. So using the size 12 brush, taking up some of the grey and taking off the excess, we're just going to put in just some sweeping hills or little mountains. Keep it nice and loose, don't worry too much and try to be too precise. This really isn't that kind of painting. So you're just going to be putting in the outlines of your mountains. And then all we need to do is, again, just using the grey and a little bit more water this time, we'll just wash that through and just bring the colour down to the tape. Now that's looking quite, I suppose, a little bit rough really, the way that the paint is then collected. So all we now need to do is, using your kitchen paper, you can just dry off the brush, making sure it's really quite dry. And then you're just going to just manipulate that paint ever so slightly, just to give it some different texture and a little bit of different tone to those little mountains. Just keep drying the brush as you go, and then you'll be able to create that little bit of shadowing. And just manipulate the paint a little bit really, is what you're going to be doing. So like I say, just keep drying the brush, and you'll find that when you dry the brush, it just becomes that little bit flatter and has that little bit more texture to it. And then you can just add in a little bit more details to your mountains. Using the dry brush, the paint will actually lift, and you'll end up with a nice bit of light on that mountain. And then we'll just work work on this little last one up here. Let me just move the camera along so you can see what I'm doing. There we go. And you, obviously when you come to do this, you can really just take some time just to add in these extra little sort of tonal details, so you get something that you're actually happy with. Like I say, it's such an easy technique. You just need to make sure that the brush is actually dry, and then you can add in a little bit of texture. Okay. I'm quite happy with that. So we've got our mountains in place. So what I'm now going to do is I'm now just going to put in a second mountain, and I'm going to be using some of this space here, this paler. So I'm just going to put in something just that little bit higher, just in the actual background. So again, I'm just going to wet my brush, still keeping with the nice large brush. This time I'm going to mix some grey. I want to keep it nice and pale because the mountain in the background is going to be that little bit paler than the one that's in the foreground. Oops. I just blobbed a bit of grey paint on my painting, so we'll just very quickly just take that up with the kitchen paper. If you act quickly, it will lift. Okay, so using the grey, take off the excess paint off your brush, and then we'll just put in some little details across the back. So just keeping it very light this time. You don't want anything too dominant in the background. Now you can actually make some of this white space work for you. So just using just the water and the paint that you've just very loosely applied, just wash that down very nice and lightly. Just take off the excess as and when you get it on your brush. And doing it this way, you'll create just that little bit of extra depth to your painting. Like I said, don't worry too much about filling in all of the background. Just use that white space to work for you. You can still dry the brush off and use it to take up some of the excess paint. Like so. Like I say, just spend some time just to be, fairly conscious about the way that the paint is moving around your paper, and just be a little bit conscious about the shading and the tones of those mountains. So I'll just move my paper along a little bit. So just move the camera slightly. And we'll just work on this big one here. So again, just wet the brush and using the kitchen paper just to dry the excess off. So you've got your kitchen paper ready. just use the water to just very fluidly move that grey paint around. And just blur those lines. If you need to add more paint, you can do. I'm just going to add a little bit more just down this side. Obviously that's gone wet on wet, and you can see how that's actually blooming now. So we'll just spend a few moments just manipulating that paint till we get something that I'm happy with. So I'm just going to dry the brush off and give it a real nice squeeze, and then we'll take some of that paint away. And you see the effect that that's had? And we'll come down this side. Okay, so we'll just move along, just finish our last one. So again, just wet the brush. We will just take up a little bit of paint on this one just to get it moving again. So again, that paint's just bloomed ever so slightly. So again, just using my kitchen paper, give it a nice good squeeze, and then just take that excess paint away. Like I say, just being mindful as to where the shadowing is on that mountain. So don't rush this, do take your time. When you're doing your mountains, just take some time to add in the different tones of colour. Like I say, you're just working with the grey, you're working with a larger brush, but just take some time, and then you'll end up with a background that you're actually going to be quite happy with. Again, so simple. Just make sure you're working with the paint and with that drier brush, and then that will just add the different textures that you'll be looking for in that background of the mountains. And just have some fun. Have some fun as to how it feels, how the paint is manipulated, how you can add the different shades and tones of colours. And then you should end up with something like that. So let me just hold it up for you. So you should end up with your mountains like that. Okay, so that needs to dry, and then I shall be back again tomorrow, and we will work on our third stage of our landscape painting. Have some fun. I'm around for if you've got any questions or queries, but take your time, do enjoy, and I will see you very, very soon.